Thank you, Jess. This next speaker is Ryan Sexson. Ryan and his family lease a small ranch on the north central edge of the Sandhills, close to Nensel, Nebraska. The Sexsons operate their ranch as a custom calving operation in the spring, followed by a custom grazing operation through the grazing season. They also provide summer care for a large number of pairs and yearling steers for a ranch that Ryan has worked on for the past 10 years. Ryan works as a day laborer for a number of ranches in the area, and he trains a few horses on the side. The Sexsons operate as a family. The kids are an integral part of the day-to-day operation, and they have been a part of all aspects of the operation since the family leased the ranch. Ryan is currently the president of the Cherry County 4-H Council, the chair of the 4-H Horse Committee, and a board member of the National Grazing Lands Coalition. Please welcome Ryan Sexson.
Okay, good. I don't think I can stand at the podium. You're all probably wondering what the deal is with the rope, so I was getting ready to come here, and I don't travel much, so I called the airport, and they sent me to TIA, and I couldn't talk them into letting me carry a pistol on the plane because I've never been to the city before, and I wanted something to protect myself, and I could get this in my bag. So, no, it's a coping mechanism. I've never used one till today. I've had this, not this rope, but I've had a rope in my hand since I could walk. So, trying to find a little bit of comfort here. I'm going to talk to you about a bit of a journey that's been unbelievable. I want you to look around. I want you to turn to your neighbor and say hello. How are you? And then I want you to look again, and I want you to say, no, really, how are you doing? You all right? Because I'm here to tell you somebody's lying to you. Everybody said I'm fine. Right? I'm also going to dig into something that's probably not quite politically correct. I want you to look around, and what do you see? You see somebody that's well-dressed. You know, that person, they're wealthy, right? You see somebody that's not so well-dressed, and boy, they must, what's wrong with them? And then you see this person that looks like they probably struggle with their weight, and boy, they must be lazy, and they don't put any effort in, because how could you let yourself go like that? And then you see this other person, they've got tears in their eyes, boy, they must be soft. Well, and then, you know, and I don't want to offend anybody at all, but you look at this other person and you say, well, I'll bet they voted for Biden. They've got to be a communist, right? And then you see old John over here. He had his overalls on yesterday, and he's a bigot because he had to have voted for Trump. Somebody wearing overalls like that in a place like this, he's got to be the lowest person in the world. I can't believe anybody could think that way, right? So we make all these judgments of somebody, and we don't even get to know them. We don't ask, how you doing? You don't know someone's struggle. The other thing is that your struggle is real. It's valid. There is not one struggle in this world that is less valid than another, because it's yours. And it's something that you are having to deal with. Someone's loss of a loved one is no less valid than someone's struggle with weight loss, or their self-esteem, or the fact that they want to be a straight-A student and they work their ass off, excuse my language, and can't draw a C. But they work so hard and they don't ever get that reward. And it just doesn't matter what they do, that effort never comes to fruition. It's not any different in the ranching, farming, dairy industry. You bust your butt day in and day out to lose money and go broke. Look around this room. How many folks do you think have had that struggle? And first thing we say is, they're a terrible manager. They couldn't. Well, how do you know that? What are the circumstances? Sometimes, truly, they're beyond our control, and I think you'd find more often than not, a lot of times when that situation comes about, if you find out what the level of integrity is, it'd be shocking, because they became that way because they would not go back on their word. So what's the balance? You look at your neighbor and he's going bankrupt, and boy, he's a real pile of crap. He went bankrupt because he wouldn't go back on his word. He could have hung somebody, and he didn't, or she. What's worse? And what do you support? You won't support him because of his financial struggles, but yet he's got as much integrity, or she, as any person you've ever met. What's it worth, right? So keep some of those things in mind when you look around and you ask somebody, how are they doing? I grew up in a really remote place in the Sandhills. There's more remote, I suppose, but we went to give you an idea, we went to town once a month in a full-size Ford van and bought groceries and filled it. That was the one time a month that we went to town. It was 90 miles. We were remote. It's an issue. Because of that remoteness, we don't have availability to services, right? And we're isolated, and if we're lucky, we live in a neighborhood where there's a community that gathers to help one another. In the ranching community, my favorite time of the year was branding, because it's the equivalent of a party every day, right? Because all the neighbors came together. They worked hard, and then everybody sat down and they had lunch together. And I mean, when I talk about lunch, it wasn't sandwiches. It was a meal. And then afterwards, they took the afternoon off, and they played cards all afternoon, or softball, or it was a community gathering. And man, was I fortunate to grow up in that, because honestly, had I not, I wouldn't be with you today. Moving forward, when I was about 12 or 13, my dad left and just walked off pretty much, and didn't have much to do with this. And he had other, I guess he just going to work or whatever, but he never showed up again pretty much. And, so my parents finally divorced, and all that, I went to through high school. I was a great, I wouldn't say great, a good athlete. I started 3 out of 4 years on the football team, all-state lineman. Had some success, did well in FFA. Always had a prom date, a homecoming date, and it's just kind of like Jessica said, life of the party. I had a lot of friends from all over the state, and I was dying inside. Nobody had any idea until I was 40-some years old when I started to share my story. I was 15 years old, sitting on the bed alone. My mom worked 3 jobs, about 16 to 18 hours a day. And I walked over to the gun cabinet, and I grabbed a shotgun and I sat down, and I was going to end it all. The only thing that saved my life is God put an image in my head just as I was squeezing that trigger of my mom having to clean up that mess. And as I could feel that squeeze, it didn't go off. I didn't complete it. So I put it back in the gun cabinet and I went on about life, right? And then moving forward, and I want you to know, I'm not telling you this so somebody, don't feel sorry for me, because I'm not a victim of anything. I'm not telling you this because it's my dad's fault or somebody else's fault. I'm telling you because this is how it is. Went on and I had a struggle in college. And, you know, I really didn't, I honestly can't tell you what that was. When I struggled in high school, I can't tell you what that was other than I was empty. And I was surrounded by a community that loved me so much, you can't even imagine. As I got older, I started to realize that, but have to back up a little bit. Maybe some of you have seen my cap that says "Free Dad Hugs." There's more to that story, but when I was in high school, the high school faculty had a team that would I can't think of the term, crisis sort of team, right? So they realized I was failing terribly, so they called me in and they wanted to help me get through school and find a way for me to pick up my grades, and they were focused on my grades. I don't think any of them understood what I was telling them. And they said, "We want to help you." And I told them, I said, "I don't want to be here anymore." And they thought I was talking about high school. And they just kept pushing at me and kept pushing at me. The only thing I could tell them is I just don't want to be here anymore. And I think pretty soon they thought maybe I was talking about being in that room, you know. And so they finally gave up because I couldn't get anything out of me. And I'm walking out of that room, and I'm a fairly emotional person anyway, but I was a mess. I was frustrated, and I was mad, and I didn't want to exist any longer. And I'm walking out of that room and having a hard time, and my English teacher reaches out and grabs me and embraces me and gives me a hug. I can feel that hug like it happened today, 30 years later. Might have saved my life. Don't ever undervalue that, and don't be afraid to let someone know you care, because you never know whose life you're changing. Moving on to college, it's life the party, literally. We had the house, and everybody came, you know, and twice in college I tried to drown myself and couldn't do that, so I tried to drink myself to death and didn't get that done either. Coping, I went to a therapist. She said, "You need to find something to do constructive with your life." I had a Goldwing, so I went out for a ride on the interstate, and man, that was awesome. It was a freedom that I hadn't felt. And I don't know why, because I'd ridden that bike in the sandhills, but I experienced that same sort of freedom. It was great. Shortly after that, God somehow got me to fighting bulls, cowboy protection. And it became a passion for me, not an adrenaline rush, or felt like I had a purpose. And for 10 years, that served me well. The other thing that happened in that time period is I was walking through Sam's Club, and I don't read at all. And it's not that I can't read, I'm not a good reader, so I don't read things. Anyway, I'm walking through, and for some reason I looked over at the book section, and this book catches my eye, and it's called the Rainbow Study Bible. I bought it. Can't tell you why, but I bought it, and that's something else that saved my life multiple times. Every time I had a question or a fear, I opened that up and I'd go to the glossary and I'd look up, and it'd tell me what verses to look up, and it would relate them to something else, and it started to show me how things worked in life, right? In my early 20s, and it hit again. Early 20s, a year or two after college, and it hit again. I was really struggling, so this time I decided I needed help. I reached out, I made an appointment at a local clinic, and I went and I told the doctor that I'd known most of my life. I said, I'm struggling with life. And that doctor looked at me and told me that people don't self-diagnose with depression. You need to go home and get your shit together. So what do we do in ranching and farming? We go home and we get our shit together, don't we? We just do it. So I did. And I dealt with it for years. And then things kind of came crashing down just a little bit. Shouldn't say crash, I was fortunate. I met my wife, and we were married in 2003 and started a family, and things were really good. And we hit some really, really hard financial times. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit because it's going to hit home with a lot of people. I knew it. I did all the paperwork and all the books, and I could see it, and I'd have conversations of things like, well, we can't do this, you know. And I know you want to get the kids something fun when you go to town, but you have to quit buying that $1 Schleich toy at Bumgar's. And it's like it's just $1. Well, that adds up pretty quickly when you don't have $1, right? So we hit some, and it just wasn't going. And in December 2017, I went to go do something with the cows, and I can't even, I think it was December 7th. I mean, right around this time of the year, went to go do something with the cows, and asked my oldest daughter, who just lives to ranch, everything about it, to go with me. She said no. And I said, why not? So I don't want to go anywhere with you anymore. This is not fun. So I don't want to be around you. Boy, I'll tell you, that was hard, because I had ruined my daughter's love for something. I had ruined her passion. Whoops, sorry. Talking with my hands.
Using your hands too much, see?
I'd ruined her spark for something special, right? Well, it goes a lot further than that. I told my wife, I said, I need to make an appointment at the clinic. And I didn't tell her why. She just assumed I had the sniffles or whatever, and she made a doctor's appointment in Valentine at the clinic, and Dr. Sinsney there, he's been there forever, and he can be kind of direct and not everybody's favorite person sometimes, and he walks in and he says, so what's going on? What are you here for? And I looked down at the ground and I said, I'm struggling with life. And he said, does your wife know about this? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, she's still here, isn't she? And I said, well, Yeah, she's probably out in the parking lot. And he says, you call her and tell her to get her in here right now. He said, we're gonna deal with this. And he didn't give me a choice. So long story short, Jamie came in and we talked a little bit about it, and they started me on a drug regimen, a shot called ketamine, and that they use ketamine to treat severe PTSD patients. And I'd never make a drug addict. That's one of the worst trips I've ever been on in my life. It was horrible. You know, they told me it would take me an hour for this drug to take effect, and then my wife could drive me home, but I couldn't drive myself. And 2 hours later, Jamie carried me out of the hospital, out of the clinic, pretty much. I could just barely get my legs under me. It kicked my butt. I woke up the next morning. For the first time ever in my life, I had a smile on my face when I woke up that I can remember. And I felt ridiculous because I felt so good. I slept for like 12 hours. I'd been sleeping about 20 or 30 minutes a night before that. I slept for 12 hours straight. I woke up and I was refreshed. My thoughts were cleared, and it didn't go away. I smiled all day long, to the point I felt absolutely ridiculous because I could feel it. I could feel the smile on my face, right? And I was, what in the hell am I smiling for? I mean, I didn't, nothing happened. I didn't win the lottery, or at least I haven't checked my ticket yet. Somebody said something about buying lottery tickets. I bought a few in my life. But anyway, moving forward with that, I had to take 5 of those treatments, and for the first time in my life, I had to admit that I had a problem bad enough that I needed medication. Right? We don't take medication. If it gets real bad, we go to the vet room and get a little antibiotic and take something, you know, or if maybe we'll go to the doctor, but that's after we've seen what we've got in the cabinet in the vet room. But we don't, and to admit that I was in a place mentally so bad that I had to take medication was tough because I didn't want to take medication. Fortunately, I only had to take that medication for about 4 or 5 months, and I was able to get myself together to where I could deal without it. But, you know, there's, when you talk about struggles, I can tell you medication will only do so much for you. And I'm not bucking science or anything else, but I couldn't sleep. I had anxiety. They gave me a Xanax drug so that I could sleep. And to make it short, I'm going to draw long here on this, but I got to the point where I'd take a Xanax and 3 or 4 beers. And not because I needed the beers, but I was hoping that they'd kick the Xanax into overdrive and I could actually fall asleep. I could take one before I went to bed 20 minutes, and I could take the second one if I woke up in the middle of the night at like 1 o'clock. So I went from not being a drinker to drinking 6 to 8 beers a night to try to get that Xanax to work so that I could get 20 minutes of sleep. And that's about what it did for me. I don't know how I found my peace. There's another part to that struggle. My wife has had a terrible struggle as well. And she was dealing with some things previous to her finding out that I was struggling, right? You don't share that. You're supposed to be the strong one, so you don't share that with your loved one. And things weren't good. You know, my wife is my biggest fan. And without her, I don't know where I would be, but I could tell there was just a certain amount of resentment. And when my wife was going through her struggle, she was trying to get me to help her. And I couldn't, and so one day I finally sat her down and I said, "What is your problem?" I said, "You just seem so resentful towards me." And my wife completely lost it. And when I say lost it, I'm not talking tears. She was pissed. And she said, "You've been there." I said, "You're right, I have." And she said, "But you could have helped me and you didn't. You left me alone. You let me struggle through that by myself." I tried to get my wife to go see someone and talk to him, and she didn't want to. And she thought I knew all the answers. And I said, I tried to help you. And she said, "No, you didn't. You didn't try to help me. You left me alone. You knew what it was like. You could have helped me." And I said, "I tried to get you to go talk to someone because I can't help you." I said, "I can hold your hand and I can tell you I love you and I can give you a hug and I can be here, but I can't. I don't know how to help you. So I tried to get you to go talk to somebody else." That was hard. And that changed our relationship. Every ounce of this has made our marriage stronger. So I'm gonna talk about something else here real quick, and then I'm gonna land the plane. But with that being said, I'm a very open person, and some of you experienced that, and some of you have not. But when I appreciate something, I pay a compliment. And some of those compliments are not considered okay today because they're sexual harassment or they've got whatever. And if I see a young lady or an older lady that looks beautiful, I say, "Man, you look awesome. You're so beautiful." And I can't tell you how many times I've had some gal look at my wife like, "Uh-oh." My wife gets me, and she knows where I'm coming from. Do not be afraid to share those compliments because you don't know that person's struggle. "Jessica, thank you. I love you. Thank you for sharing, because that's hard. You're beautiful. Thank you." Don't ever miss that opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life. It doesn't matter who they voted for. It doesn't matter what their financial situation is. It doesn't matter what the color of their skin is, where they go to church, what they drive. We all have struggles, and every one of them is just as valid as the other. On October 17th, my family experienced every parent's worst nightmare. We drove to Alliance, Nebraska, Jamie and I did, to renew our lease. And we had sat down with our landlords, not 5 minutes, and the phone rang. And it was my daughter, Riley. She was supposed to take James to school and get his homework and catch it up. And we knew that. I couldn't hear what was going on, but I knew it wasn't good. To shorten it up, they had a single car accident. And I dispatched an ambulance from Alliance, Nebraska, 2.5 hours from home, and our son was laying next to the car dying. There's a whole series of events, and I could talk to you for hours about this. I lose track of time, but November 4th, James was scheduled to go to rehab. He had made a full recovery, a miraculous recovery, with a whole pile of miracles. They nicknamed him the Cat and the PQ because every time he had a hurdle, he jumped it and he moved on. On November 4th, James had a traumatic brain aneurysm. So I headed to Omaha again, 350 miles from home. And he went in for surgery, and his surgery went well. Things looked all right. That afternoon, he had a brain bleed. They got that under control, and they induced James into a coma so that he would hold still and not fight, because he wanted so bad to come home that he fought through the paralytic and the anesthesia, and they couldn't hold him still. They would test his reflex, and they could not get one, and he would reach up and try to rip a tube out. He wanted to come home so bad and wake up. They couldn't, so they put him in a coma. When you have a traumatic brain aneurysm and they repair it, or any kind of brain aneurysm and repair it, you're at a high risk for a stroke. On Veterans Day, November 11th, James had a massive center cerebral cortex stroke, and we lost him. Not quite a month ago. He's 12 years old. People will tell you that that's the hardest thing that you'll ever deal with in your life. They're wrong. It's not. How can that be? I guess I'm going to share something with you. Some of you need to hear it, some of you don't want to hear it, some of you already know it. If you don't have faith, you've got no hope. This is hard. This talk is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I'm sad every morning. But I have never gotten to a point, that dark point, to where I wanted to take my own life. And I thank God for that, because as I shared with you before, I've been there more times than I want to ever have admitted to anybody in my life. But we've shared this story with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, and it's given people hope, and it's helped people. And our son's legacy lives on, because that's who he was. Some of you have met James, and he loved people. We choose to honor that, and not only that, but to honor our other children, our daughters, and to live on instead of waking up every morning and letting it ruin our day. It's hard, but there is hope. And in my lifetime, I could also, write a book of moments of that hug, moments of a person that took time to say hello, someone that I didn't think cared about me, that walked across the street to shake my hand through traffic and say, "Good morning, Ryan. How the hell are you? I haven't seen you for a couple months. Man, it's good to see you." Or somebody notices and says, man, you've lost weight. Been working hard, haven't you? Or your hair's beautiful. You took time to fix your hair today. Man, you look great. Don't ever miss an opportunity to share that, because you never know. I had a friend, I'm going to land it, Kate, after this. I had a friend call one time that wanted to come see me. And I don't know why. I've just always been, sure, come on. That gal came and saw me, and she supposedly was coming to visit a neighbor and just wanted to stop by and say hello while she's there. She spent the whole weekend, and she never left the whole weekend. And I kind of knew something. I mean, you figure it out. When somebody doesn't leave, there's something up, right? So I'm thinking that, I didn't know what it was, and not to be, but I'm thinking maybe there were some real serious issues at college that didn't know what, right? So she gets ready to leave, and so I better get ready to go back to school and college, and I walk her out to her car, and she's still just clinging, right? And so Ryan, I got to tell you something. I said, okay, no problem. You can tell me whatever you've got. And she said, well, I got to level with you. I didn't come out to see Zoanne. I said, yeah, I kind of gathered that. You obviously haven't left yet, so something else is up. I said, but you can tell me about it. And she said, Ryan, I tried to commit suicide a year ago, and I committed myself to a hospital, and I spent 9 months in the hospital, and I scooped her up and I gave her a hug and I told her I loved her and it was all right. And she said, well, Ryan, she said, I got something I got to tell you. And you can tell me anything. And she said, when I called you, I was never planning to come see Zoanne. She said, I was at the bottom of the barrel, and I didn't have anybody else to call. So I called you, and had you told me you didn't have time to come see me, or for me to come see you, or didn't want to, she said I was going to kill myself. I didn't know that. All I did was say, hey, come on. If you want to come out, yeah, stop by. Let's have supper. But she's got a family and 3 babies now today. Thank God. Be kind. Thank you.
Love you.